Before Gutenberg, before the printing press, before movable type changed Europe forever, someone in China was already doing it, and they've been doing it for centuries. I'm Don Hudgens, and this is Ignorant Artists, art history without the pretension. I'm a printmaker myself, so this series of episodes is personal for me. We're talking about where printmaking comes from, not where it came from in Europe or America, where it actually started, and it started in China. Over the next three episodes, we're going to trace the printmaking tradition from its origins in Tang Dynasty China, through its transformation in Japan into one of the most recognizable art forms in all of history, and then to Korea, where some of the most astonishing feats of human devotion and craftsmanship in the entire printmaking story took place. But today, China. Let's go back to the beginning.
To understand Chinese printmaking, you have to start with two inventions that made it possible: paper and ink. Both are Chinese. Paper was invented in China around 105 CE, traditionally credited to a court official named Kai Lun during the Han Dynasty. Before paper, people wrote on silk, bamboo strips, and oracle bones. Expensive, heavy, or fragile. Paper changed everything. It was cheap, light, and could be produced in large quantities. Within a few centuries, it had spread across Asia and eventually the world. Ink had been in use in China even longer. Carbon-based ink made from soot and animal glue goes back thousands of years. Chinese calligraphy, one of the highest art forms in Chinese culture, was built entirely around the relationship between ink, brush, and paper. The same sensibility, the reverence for the mark, the weight of the brushstroke, the balance of black and white would shape Chinese printmaking from the very beginning. Put paper and ink together, and you have the conditions for printing. The only thing missing is a surface that can hold ink and transfer it repeatedly to paper. That surface is the woodblock. The earliest woodblock prints in China were almost certainly used for textile printing, pressing carved wooden blocks into fabric to repeat a pattern. The leap from textile to paper printing seems obvious in retrospect, but it was still a genuine leap. Someone had to figure out that you could carve an image in reverse into a block of wood, apply ink to the raised surface, and press paper against it to transfer the image. That moment, whenever and wherever it happened, is the birth of printmaking. The oldest surviving dated printed book in the world is not European. It's not Gutenberg's Bible. It's a Chinese Buddhist text called the Diamond Sutra, printed in 868 CE during the Tang Dynasty, nearly 600 years before Gutenberg. The Diamond Sutra is a scroll about 16 feet long, printed from 7 wood blocks. It was found in 1900 in a sealed cave at Dunhuang, in the Gansu province of northwestern China, along with tens of thousands of other manuscripts and artworks that had been hidden there around 1000 CE, probably to protect them from invaders. The cave had been sealed and forgotten for nearly 900 years. What's remarkable about the Diamond Sutra isn't just its age, it's the quality. The printing is precise and even, the text clear and consistent. This isn't a primitive early experiment, it's a mature technology, which means printing in China was already well established by 868 CE. The Diamond Sutra is the oldest dated example we have, not the first printed object that ever existed. The text itself is a key Buddhist scripture. It is a dialogue between the Buddha and one of his disciples about the nature of perception and reality. The colophon at the end, printed as part of the text, reads, "Reverently made for universal free distribution by Wang Jie on behalf of his 2 parents on the 13th of the 4th moon of the 9th year of Xiantong." That phrase, "for universal free distribution," is striking. This wasn't printed to sell. It was printed to share. The technology of printing, from its very beginning in China, was tied to the idea of making knowledge available to more people. The Diamond Sutra is now in the British Library in London, where it has been since the explorer Aurel Stein purchased it from the monk who guarded the Dunhuang Cave in 1907. Its removal from China remains controversial. The Diamond Sutra wasn't an accident. It emerged from a specific cultural context during the Tang Dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, one of the most cosmopolitan and creative periods in Chinese history, and the explosive spread of Buddhism across Asia. Buddhism arrived in China from India in the 1st century CE and grew steadily for centuries. By the Tang Dynasty, it had become one of the dominant forces in Chinese cultural life. And Buddhism had a particular relationship with the printed word. Buddhist scripture was sacred. Copying it was an act of devotion. The more copies you made, the more merit you accumulated. Karma. Printing made it possible to produce copies faster than any monk could write them by hand. This created enormous demand for printing. Monasteries became centers of print production. Buddhist images, the Buddha, bodhisattvas, mandalas, were among the most commonly printed subjects. Small printed amulets with Buddhist imagery were mass-produced for ordinary people who couldn't afford painted scrolls. Print was democratizing devotion. The Tang Dynasty was also a period of intense cultural exchange along the Silk Road. Merchants, pilgrims, diplomats, and artists traveled between China, Central Asia, India, Persia, and beyond. Paper and printing techniques spread along these routes. By the time printing reached Korea and Japan, carried by Buddhist monks and missionaries, it had already been refined over generations of Chinese practice. Movable type was its second, and it happened in China 400 years before Gutenberg. Around 1040 CE, during the Song Dynasty, a commoner named Bi Sheng invented movable type using baked clay. Each character was carved individually on a small clay block, set into an iron frame with resin and wax, printed, and then the frame could be broken apart and the characters reassembled for the next page. It was ingenious. There's a reason movable type didn't replace woodblock printing in China the way it eventually did in Europe. And it comes down to one thing: the Chinese writing system. European languages use alphabets of 26 letters or so. To print in Chinese, you need thousands of individual characters. The standard educated vocabulary alone requires several thousand, and a complete printing font might need tens of thousands. Setting type for a Chinese text was enormously labor-intensive. For many printing jobs, carving a woodblock was actually faster. Movable type in China was refined over subsequent centuries. Bronze type was developed during the Song Dynasty, and Korean printers would later develop a highly sophisticated metal movable type system that predated Gutenberg's by over 2 centuries. But woodblock printing remained the dominant technology in China for most of its history, producing not just text, but images of extraordinary sophistication, printed in sequence. A complex color print might require 5, 8, or even more separate blocks, each inked with a different color and printed one on top of the other. The results were extraordinary. Late Ming color woodblock prints, particularly the illustrated books produced in Nanjing and Suzhou, achieved a delicacy and refinement that rivals anything produced anywhere in the world at that time. Botanical prints, erotic albums, illustrated poetry collections, manuals of painting technique were produced using this multi-block color method. One of the most celebrated examples is the Shizhuzhai Jianpu, or 10 Bamboo Studio Manual of Calligraphy and Painting, first published in the 1620s. It was produced by a scholar named Hu Zhengyan. using a technique that combined multiple color blocks with embossing, pressing the paper into carved recesses to create subtle raised textures that suggested the texture of petals, feathers, or fabric without ink. The result looks almost impossible. Color prints with a three-dimensional quality that photography can barely capture. This tradition of color woodblock printing would travel to Japan, where it would be transformed into ukiyo-e, the floating world prints of Hokusai, Hiroshige, and Utamaro that became some of the most recognized images in art history. But that's the next episode. Chinese printmaking invented something that changed the world. The ability to reproduce images and text quickly, cheaply, and consistently. To make knowledge and imagery available to people who couldn't afford a painter or a scribe is one of the transformative technologies in human history. The specific techniques of Chinese woodblock printing, carving in relief, applying water-based ink, printing on absorbent paper, are still practiced today. Contemporary printmakers around the world work in traditions that trace directly back to Tang Dynasty China. The tools have changed very little in 1,000 years. There's a continuity here that's easy to overlook. The same fundamental process, carve, ink, press, print, connects a monk in a Tang Dynasty monastery to a printmaker working in a studio today. The technology is ancient. The impulse behind it is even older. To make something, to multiply it, to put it into more hands. The colophon on the Diamond Sutra said it plainly. 4. Universal free distribution. That idea that knowledge and beauty should be shared as widely as possible is as alive in the printmaking tradition today as it was in 868 CE.
I want to say something personal here. I'm a printmaker. Relief printmaking is the center of my studio practice. And doing the research for this episode reminded me that every time I carve a block, pull a print, I'm participating in a tradition that goes back over 1,000 years. The tools I use, the basic process, ink, blocks, paper, press, haven't changed in any fundamental way since Tang Dynasty China. That's a humbling thing to sit with. Next time on Ignorant Artists, we're heading into Japan, where Chinese printmaking traditions were absorbed, transformed, and pushed into something entirely new. Ukiyo-e, the floating world. Hokusai's Great Wave. That's episode 8. And if you like the t-shirts I wear on the show, you can find them at my Redbubble page. The link is in the show notes. Also in the notes, you can find a link to a YouTube video on Chinese ink making. Definitely worth checking out. Handmade Chinese ink blocks can sell for thousands of dollars today. And while you're in YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to all the Ignorant Artists videos. And be sure to leave a comment. It really helps with the algorithm. I'm Don Hudgens. This has been Ignorant Artists. Thanks for being here, and remember, ignorant don't mean stupid.